So I just completed my second playthrough of The Ancient Gods Part 2, the conclusion to the Doom Eternal saga. If you haven't been following the game, there's been a good bit of drama surrounding this, and it's something I really don't understand. This might be some deep Doom Eternal community shit, so if you're not too terribly interested in that, then this will still just be kind of a small primer, a little bit of a review on this, but I kind of just want to address how the negative reactions to this game. First of all, is the growing criticism that the game is too easy. Now, there's a lot of layers to that. It is a lot easier than Part 1 was at Part 1's release. Part 1 has now been significantly nerfed. There's a lot of layers to that too that I just don't want to go too deep into, but part 1, especially the opening of part 1, was taken and decreased in difficulty levels across all difficulty levels, and that's rankled some people. It's rankled me a little bit. That game kicked my ass. I'm not the best Doom Eternal player in the world and have no claims to be, no delusions that I'm in the top tier. I certainly am not. I struggle through Nightmare. I play on Nightmare mostly. That's where my challenge is now. But you're probably never going to see me do an Ultra Nightmare run of anything. My nerves aren't good for that, and I'm just probably never going to get that good in general. But I struggled through part 1, but I got it, and I got there. On Ultra Violence. I did Ultra Violence on both of these. I'm doing a Nightmare run of both of them now. I'm a little bit into part 1, and then I'm going to come and do part 2 on Nightmare. But part 1 was hard. Part 1 was crushingly hard. And I started part 1 after having stepped away from the game for several months. So it was kind of a miserable slog for me. I wish they hadn't made it as hard as they did, but they did, and I got better and I lived with it, and that's fine. To nerf it 6 months later seems a little off, but I get what they're going for. I don't know if what they're going for is a good thing or a sensible thing at this point, because they want to bring people in who, not new players, but players who, haven't just stayed playing this game for months and months and months. For the whole year at this point. We're more than a year in to Doom Eternal. And I get that. But you kind of already released part 1 to be for the folks that had been getting good over the past, what was it? It was out 8 months. 5 to 6, whatever. So yeah, that's a weird backpedal. But I get it, you gotta move units. You gotta, you want people to finish that so that they can play this one. And that's fine. That's fine, and I understand why people were mad at it. Because that game, Ancient Gods Part 1, really just ramps up. It was such a good flow coming off of the main game and then going into that. It felt like level 15. As opposed to a level 1 and something else. So what they did when they did that and they released this is they kind of reset that narrative, because their original narrative was, this is for the hardcore people with the DLC. It was even whenever you went to go into to select your difficulty in the DLC, it would give you your difficulty description and say, but more, because it's DLC. So they've kind of let go of that as the narrative, and the narrative is the DLC is for everybody, and the master levels are going to be for the really hardcore players. And that's fine, it's just changing ships midstream, and it rubs some people the wrong way, and I get it. But I also get what they were going for, and I don't know if the DLC is for hardcore players was necessarily the way to go to begin with. It probably wasn't, but they had already gone that way, so, they kind of backed themselves into a corner, and I think that they're handling it the best they can. But even with this reset, is the Ancient Gods Part 2 too easy? Probably a little bit. It probably needs some balancing. But I think the bigger issue here is that it's just kind of half-baked. And that's a shame. This should have been much more interesting of a conclusion than it was. Part 1 set the stage for sprawling, massive levels, and you get more scope here. You get bigger arenas, you get kind of more interesting vistas than you got in the first one, but they're not big levels. I think on my second playthrough here, and I didn't do the second escalation encounter because I tried one or two of them, but I wasn't really getting caught on that because I was just trying to get footage for this video. But I think I got through each of these levels in 30 minutes. 30 minutes, or maybe 30 and some change. So in an afternoon, I did my second playthrough. No problem. No problem at all. And that's just not a lot of content. And the things they added here, the things they added to the game that aren't in the base game, aren't in Tag 1, are not compelling. I have to say that they aren't compelling. The Sentinel Hammer is cool. It's an interesting mechanic. I'm not as bothered by the dizzy noises whenever things are staggered. I'm not bothered by the increase in the wolf volume. I actually kind of like that because that is a cue for the final boss, and also I like it on the Marauder. It's fine. The wolf is the bane of my existence when it comes to the Marauder. It's never that much of a problem, but when it's there, I hate it. So giving me a little bit more of an audio cue that it's there is fine. Sorry, that was a little sidetracked. But the hammer itself, I like the mechanic just fine. I just don't think there's any compelling reason to use it here, aside from that boss fight where you have to use it, otherwise you're just not. You're just going to be doing it for an hour. So I wish there was more to do with it. On my first playthrough, I hardly touched it. On my second playthrough, I tried to consciously incorporate it a little more into my gameplay, and I still just didn't, it's fine. I just wish that there was more to do with it. I wish that there was more reason to do it, because whenever they first give it to you, they're like, they crowd you with enemies so that you'll want to hit that panic button and smash them and daze them all, but kind of just gotten good at handling crowds of enemies because that's what they've been doing to us for the base game and the original DLC. So it never really became a core part of my gameplay. That being said, the other things that they added here were the enemies. And the complaints that you hear are that they're all reskins, and they are all reskins, and that's not their biggest sin. I don't mind that they're reskins. The Screamer, I thought, might have been a little more than a zombie. I thought it might have been something that would have given me a reason to kill it and not just a reason to avoid it. But that's fine. The Cursed Prowler is awful. The Cursed Prowler is awful because if you don't know it's going to spawn, it just cheap shots you. What happens when you get cursed by the Cursed Prowler, and it sounds exactly like the Prowler, so that the only thing you're going to have is visual cues from seeing, green zipping around. And there's other things that are green in a enemy encounter anyway, like you got the Biomancubus, you got gargoyles, the things that they throw. So there's not like an outstanding visual cue that lets you know, hey, priority target, go get him. So you're very likely to just get hit, not even knowing that one spawned in. And then when you're cursed, you lose your ability to dash. You can't lock on to the Cursed Prowler. You can only kill him with a Blood Punch, which you have to build up. And if you don't have a Blood Punch built up, you're just kind of fucked, because you're not going to have an easy time building up that Blood Punch while you're cursed. And it also drains your health. It just keeps on draining your health. I think it'll reach a point and stop, but it's so low that a single hit is going to kill you. And they can hit you from across the map, and then you have no means to really get to them quickly. And if you didn't know, like I said, if you didn't know that they were there, mm, they can cheap shot you, be across the map, and you're never going to get to them, and you're just going to die. I think that can be toned down. I think you can maybe give me another way to kill it. Sure, take away my lock-ons, but give me the ability to kill it from across the map. Or, if I have to blood punch them, give me some mobility back. I just think it's all around kind of cheap. It wasn't a problem on my second playthrough because I was, traumatized enough by the first playthrough that I knew when each of them were going to spawn in, and I just took care of them. I think I got cursed once on my second playthrough, and I immediately was close enough to blood punch him. So, no big deal there. But I don't think it's a fun enemy. The Riot Soldier is supposed to be the chain gunner return, but he's boring. It's not a hit scanner. It's still projectiles, and his aim is terrible. And the only thing the only thing that differs him from other shield guys is that his shield is indestructible. So you have to hit him from the back somehow, which is, they play off like it's a challenge, but it's really not. You have remote detonate rockets, just kind of get him past him, detonate it, he's done. There's nothing to it. It's not a challenge. That's the biggest problem with, other than the Cursed Prowler, none of the new enemies are much of a challenge. The other one is the Stone Imps, who are imps that are far more resilient than regular imps, take way more ammo, and they do this little sonic spin dash move. I kind of like these guys. They're vulnerable to full auto shotgun. They're also vulnerable to a precision bolt, ballistic precision bolt combo. You can also throw up your shield on your chain gun and dash into them and just take them out. They're interesting. They're probably the most compelling part of this as far as new enemies go. So, that is to say, not. I wish these were the worst of them, and they're probably the best of them. The Armored Baron is okay. He's just got, it's just a Baron of Hell with armor on, and you can use your plasma gun to knock his armor off and then attack him, or you can wait until his little mace turns green, and if you hit the mace, his armor shatters off, and then he's just a regular Baron. It'll regenerate, but you can quickly just ice bomb and then mobile turret him and just, do a shit ton of damage. It's not much of a challenge, and there's never more than one in any given location. I think that there is a point where you get a Baron, a regular Baron of Hell and an Armored Baron at the same time. Might be one of the escalation encounters, and that's something, but it's just not that big of a deal. Nothing here really ramps up the challenge. None of the additional stuff ramps up the challenge, and the Sentinel Hammer doesn't add enough to the gameplay to really justify it. And I hope they do something else with that. I hope the master levels, I hope they do master levels for this whole DLC here, and maybe you get to use the Sentinel Hammer in that. And the complaints about the final boss, the Dark Lord, who's Satan in a mech suit. I don't share the complaints that everybody else has. He is kind of, they say he's the worst. He's everything that's bad about the Marauder kind of rolled into one and then done in 5 phases. That's not entirely true. He has a lot more attacks that you have to read. There are no other openings. Your only chance of attack is whenever he flashes green and is about to swing the sword at you. It opens himself up. You hit him, then you hit him with a hammer, and then you do whatever you can to do the most damage possible while he's dazed. It recommends the mobile turret. Other people have their quick switch combos that seem to do a better job of that. I just stick to the mobile turret. I'm not as good at quick switching as some folks are, but I don't think he's a bad boss. I don't think he is. He's not really a hard boss, but he's not a bad one. I don't think the Icon of Sin is hard. Truth be told, I think the hardest boss in this game is the Doom Hunters, the Doom Hunter bosses. Whenever you get whenever you double them up, and that's not that hard either. That's really only hard because you aren't allowed to freeze grenade them as you can with the regular Doom Hunters. So yeah, throw that on the pile of Doom bosses that aren't that much of a challenge, which is a long, long history. Like from the very first game, Doom bosses just aren't that much of a challenge. The challenge comes in the hordes. I know Samuel Hayden, Samurai Maker, the Seraphim, whatever you want to call him, at the end of the last one was difficult. And I like that boss fight. That probably stands as the most challenging and most interesting boss fight in Doom history. And for your final fight with Satan to not be that challenging and to not be that interesting is a bummer, but I don't think it ruins anything. I think it's a fine boss fight. You gotta, he has plenty of different moves. You gotta learn to read him. You can go back and forth forever because you take his health when you damage him, he takes your health when you damage him, and you can just start feeding back on each other. And I think there's enough variety in the different phases of it. You get a point where he summons like spirit versions of the Tyrant, the Pain Elemental, Hell Knight, Macubus, and those are all easy to deal with because you can just hammer them. You can go get your hammer back by doing some glory kills on some zombies. It's not amazing, but it's fine. It's a fine boss fight. Overall, I would say this is probably the weakest of the 3 campaigns for sure. Oh yeah, I forgot the little hell soldiers, whatever. They're not even considered actual enemies. They're considered ambient enemies. the people in Amora that are in their little red suits, and you can literally kill them with a meat hook. They're the only things you can kill with a meat hook, and they just drop ammo. But no, overall, I think that this is a good campaign. I think it's fun. I think it has a lot of great visuals. I do have a problem, and this might be me, and you're welcome to tell me it's just me. But I get caught on the level geometry a lot more in this game, in Ancient Gods Part 2, than I did in the first DLC, than I ever did in the base campaign. I just get caught on level geometry, and that seems a little off. And it just doesn't seem... It just seems that this lacks polish, and it seems like it was made while everyone was working from home, which it was. But still, I'm a solid 8 out of 10 on this. I would love to see them come back and, retweak this, revise it, do some more interesting things with it, and I really just can't wait for the master levels. That, I think, all sounds great, but the backlash that this thing is getting, I think, is way too extreme. Way too extreme. They made a fairly solid product in a very trying time. So, I support it. I enjoyed it. I got my money's worth. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. I'm sure I'm forgetting to mention something. I'm sure I have more to say about it, so happy to talk about it there. Thanks, guys. See you in the next one.